Good afternoon. This is Shawn O'Connor, founder and CEO of Stratus Prep. Welcome to our presentation of 5 must-haves to get into your top business school in round 1. We are so excited to be presenting this today with our good friends at Beat the GMAT. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So here is our agenda for today. First, I'll start with some introductions. So for those of you who don't know me or who don't know Stratus Prep, we'll start with that. And then we'll get into what business schools are looking for. How do they evaluate your applications? What are the different buckets they're looking for? And then from there, we will get into what I call elements of mentions, things that did not quite make the top 5, but are still very important for you to know as you embark on this MBA application process. And then we'll get into the meat of the presentation, the 5 must-haves for your MBA application in round 1. And then I have some key takeaways, and I'll talk about some of the successes that we had this year in round 1. And then we have a special Beat the GMAT partnership offer that we're only doing in conjunction with Beat the GMAT. So go ahead and stay tuned for that because I think you'll be very excited. Great, so this is me. As some of you may know who've been on our webinars before, I did my MBA as well as my JD at Harvard. And I was a Baker Scholar, which is the top 5% of the HBS class. Before HBS, I went to Georgetown, where I graduated summa cum laude. I had a 780 on the GMAT, but you do not need a 780 on the GMAT. In fact, this year we had someone with a 590 on the GMAT in round 1 who got into Harvard. So, while obviously it's great to do well on the GMAT, you should know that you don't need to have a 750 or a 780 to get into Harvard or Stanford. I have over a decade of admissions counseling experience, and before starting Stratus Prep about 10 years ago, I worked at McKinsey & Company and Lehman Brothers. I am the author of the Forbes column, The Launching Pad, and I also frequently contribute to other publications like the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times. And these are just some of the places where Stratus Prep has been featured recently. We were particularly proud that Inc. magazine named us the 22nd fastest growing education company in the last 3 years, or over the last 3 years. And none of our competitors made the top 5,000, so that was a huge honor, and we got a nice plaque for that. And we are really, really excited about providing excellent customer service and word-of-mouth referrals, which have really just exploded our business and allowed us to serve clients all over the world. And here is my Forbes column. This is one that I did a couple of weeks ago about 6 steps to achieve your strongest MBA application. So feel free to check me out on the launching pad at Forbes. And so in terms of what Stratus Prep does, we basically offer 2 different services. So one, we offer GMAT, or if you want GRE, though we recommend GMAT, preparation. We only do individualized tutoring, and the reason for that is because tutoring is what works, quite frankly. So all of our tutors are the most qualified in the industry. They have all scored 770 or higher, which is the top 1% on a real GMAT. They've all graduated from top 5 programs, including HBS, and they all have 2 years of experience teaching before they join Stratus Prep. And the reason that we're able to attract these best tutors is we offer full-time positions to our tutors with benefits like health care and retirement. And so we really get the very best tutors in the world wanting to work with us. And wherever you are in the world, we can work with you because we do all of our tutoring online using a similar to this, a webinar or a video conference, I should say, as well as a digital blackboard that allows the tutor to see and hear you and vice versa. And then everything the tutor writes on the blackboard during the tutoring session appears live on your screen and is also saved for 1 year. So you can go back. You don't have to copy down all the notes. You can go back and review the notes anytime just by logging in to our system. And then we also offer MBA admissions counseling. And so that is everything other than the GMAT or GRE, so essays, resume, recommendations, interviews, short answer questions, scholarships, brainstorming, your narrative, your short and long-term goals. And so all of our MBA admissions counselors have graduated from top 5 MBA programs, and they all have experience of at least 2 years reading and evaluating applications. And you'll have a team of 4, and this is unprecedented in the industry. You'll have a team of 4 people who will be working with you to support you. So you'll have your MBA admissions counselor. And then you'll also have me. I will be providing strategic input throughout the process. You'll have your school-specific essay readers, so the specific readers from each school. And these are former AdComs from the schools who do an objective read before you submit and make sure that you have got everything right in terms of the culture and the values of the school. And then a professional editor. All of our professional editors have masters or PhDs in English or creative writing, and they make sure that the storytelling, the narrative, the style, the grammar, everything like that is perfect. And this team of four, this combination, is what has allowed us to have a 99% success rate for people who apply to 4 or more schools over the last 10 years. So this is my favorite slide. I will admit this next one. So the little blue bars show your chances of getting into these schools if you apply on your own. The orange shows our approximate lifetime success rate at these schools. So at Harvard, you can see we increase your chances of getting in from about 12% to about 60%. At Stanford, from about 7% to about 40%. At Wharton, from about 15% to 70%. And then at all the other schools, we're at 70% or higher. And in fact, at some of the European schools, we're even over 80%. So like, for example, Bocconi, a London Business School, INSEAD, all of those, we have over an 80% success rate. We also help generate a lot of scholarships, over $20 million in scholarships, merit-based scholarships for our students over the last 3 years, and 80% of our GMAT students score 700 or better. And as I mentioned earlier, we work with students in over 50 countries and over 39 states last year alone. So who are you really competing against? Now we're going to get into the meat of the presentation. And you are not competing against the entire pool. And that's one thing that's really important to recognize. You are competing against those who are most similar to you. Okay? So if you are an Indian engineer who's a male, you're competing with other male Indian engineers. Okay? If you are a woman who works in Hong Kong in consumer marketing, you're competing with other East Asian women who are in consumer marketing. The schools want to have diversity by gender, they want to have diversity by industry, they want to have diversity by region, they want to have diversity by function. So you are competing with those people who are most similar to you. Okay? And if at any point throughout the webinar you do have a question, please just go ahead and type that question into the question box in your GoToWebinar toolbar, and I'll be happy to address it just as soon as I can. So when we talk about what the business schools are looking for, we can group it into 3 different categories. First, they're looking at your vital stats, okay? So they're looking at your GMAT score. Now, the GMAT score is sort of a hurdle that you have to get over, a fence that you have to get over. But once you get over that, which in most cases is about 720, 730, it does not matter anymore. So a 750, 770, 790, 800, they don't have a better chance of getting in. So once you sort of get over that 720, 730 range, there's no additional increase, okay? Then in terms of work experience, okay, the schools don't care about the amount of work experience as much as people think. This year we had a student admitted to Stanford with 1 year of work experience and another student admitted to Stanford with 15 years of work experience, okay, in round 1. So, it can be a lot of different years of work experience. Yes, the norm is 2 to 6, but even if you're outside that, we've been very successful with folks that fall outside that norm. What's more important is the impact of the work that you've had, okay, and having really significant impact and being able to demonstrate that both quantitatively and qualitatively in your resume. Then the schools are going to want to see leadership positions, both during college and after college, in your work and your extracurricular activities. Okay, so these are things that are going to be critically important. And then finally, certain schools will look at your undergraduate GPA, mostly Harvard, Stanford, not so much Wharton, not so much INSEAD, and then the lower tier schools are much more focused on the GMAT. So everybody focuses on these vital stats, and they are very important. But what's also really important is your unique personal story, okay? And this is where people don't spend enough time, and this is why our students get in and so many others don't. So who are you? What are your greatest accomplishments? What are your major setbacks? How have you grown from those setbacks? What diverse perspectives would you bring to the class? What unique contributions would you bring to the class? So for example, I wrote one of my essays about the fact that when I was in high school, my father had a brain injury. And we had been doing pretty well as a family, and suddenly we were in financial distress. My father was in a severe medical crisis for many months. And so I wrote about that to demonstrate that I would have this unique perspective in terms of, sort of the experience of consumers in the healthcare space, to talk about how I overcame those setbacks with the help of my family and friends, and how I ended up financing my education when my family wasn't able to anymore. So, that is something that I wrote about for HBS, and it works really well because it's heartfelt. It shows who you are as a person and a leader, and that makes a huge difference when you're applying to business school, because the GMAT tells them you won't fail out, but the why you tells them if you're going to be the next great CEO or the next president or the next future leader of a major nonprofit. And then they want to know why business school. They want to know why you need an MBA, why you need it now, and why you want to go to their specific school or program. And if you can't convince them why you want to go to their specific school or program, you're going to be in trouble and you're not going to be admitted, because it's sort of like dating. The schools want folks who want them. Okay, so that's what's really important. The schools want folks who want them. And so, why do you specifically need to go to this school? What classes do they have? What centers? What programs do they have? What international relationships do they have that make this absolutely essential for your success, for you to reach your long and short-term goals, which we can help you shape? So I think it really takes 5 things to get into a top MBA program. First, you need enough time. Enough time to do the test prep if you haven't already done it. So everybody will have to do the GMAT, or if you want the GRE, we recommend the GMAT. If you went to a non-English speaking college, you'll have to do the TOEFL, or if you're applying in Europe, the IELTS or the TOEFL, but in the US, the TOEFL. So you may have 1 or 2 tests that you're going to need to do. You're going to need to write these essays that are so critical and different for each of the schools. And even when the questions are similar, the answers should be different because each school is looking for something different. And then you're going to need to work with your recommenders because they're going to need to do a lot of work to really produce, top-tier content for you. So there's a lot of things to do. And we had people starting for round 1 in December and January. So if you're going to apply in round 1, we're at about 70% capacity right now, so you definitely want to get started now. And you want to then, number 2, complete an introspective process, okay? Before you actually start writing the essays, the much harder thing is figuring out the topics to write about, what will make you unique and different. And that leads to number 3, building a profile that will differentiate you within the global, large applicant pool. That will separate you from other applicants, right? So that's why the personal is so important, because the personal helps separate you from people with a similar professional background, people from a similar personal background. And then you need to customize every part of the application to each school. Okay, that's really, really important. Wharton is looking for one thing. They're looking for data-driven analytical problem solvers. Harvard is looking for something very different. They are looking for global entrepreneurial leaders. And so to do that, you're going to need to customize to each of the schools. Okay, you're going to need to, make sure that not only what you write, but what your recommenders write is really tailored to highlighting your experiences that would be most relevant to each of these schools. And then I think it would just be crazy to go through this process without an expert to help review and edit your entire applications. We've been doing this for over 10 years. We've helped more than 4,000 applicants. We can tell you that's a boring essay that's not going to work, or that's a typical essay that everybody writes. You're not going to be able to do that on your own. All right. So elements of mention. These are things that didn't quite make my top 5, but are important. So, academic performance, we talked a little bit about this. This means GPA at Harvard and Stanford. At most other schools, it means GMAT. Most schools just look at the overall number, and they're looking for 720 and above. Once you're in that 720 to 730 and above range, you're good to go. Wharton is an exception, so I put it here as an element of mention. They are really looking at your quant score as well as your overall score, so they want to see a quant score of 49 or higher, which is really high. It's only 2 off of perfect. And then solid work history, you want to show impact. Let your recommenders and your resume speak to your promotions. You want to focus on your impact, okay? What did you actually do to improve sales or reduce costs? How did you make that business or that nonprofit stronger? And all of you should be entrepreneurs and innovators. That is critically important, entrepreneurship and innovation, okay? You really need to be an entrepreneur or an innovator to get into these schools today, because they've all spent all this money on centers for entrepreneurship, so they really want you They really want you there. And then in terms of international experience, okay, you want to have more than just study abroad. It could be that you worked abroad. If not, we can try to help you do a service project abroad. It could just be for a week or two, but it has to be related to your overall themes of your application. It can't be just something random. But we do have to have that international work experience, or you're not going to be successful at the top schools. So here is my number one thing that you need to be successful as you prepare for round one. You need to demonstrate a commitment to one or two extracurricular activities after college. And it can't just be fundraising. It has to be high-level impact, okay? So you want to demonstrate strategic thinking. So one of the great ways to do this is to be on a junior board or a young professionals board. These are great ways to show impact. So it's not just about fundraising. It's not just about tutoring kids. It's about having impact and demonstrating that you are a strategic leader. The reason the schools care about this is not because they want you to help the poor, though that, of course, is critically important in my opinion. They care about this as an example of your leadership and your leadership potential. Number two, demonstrated leadership, okay? So we need to do that. There's many ways you can do it. You can do it through work. You can do it through extracurriculars. Here are some other ways you can do it through athletics. So if you were on a varsity sport as a leader during college, if you've served in the military, whether the U.S. or a foreign military, that can be extremely valuable. We had someone from the Singaporean military who got into both HBS and Stanford in round one. And then student government in college could be another way that you could demonstrate leadership. Okay? So lots of different ways from nonprofit boards to the military to demonstrate leadership. Number three, you need clear, attainable, short and long-term goals that will contribute significantly to society. Now, that does not mean that you should say you want to do a nonprofit, because nonprofits may not be sustainable in the long term, right? What is more interesting is a social enterprise, okay, something that makes money, but that is also contributing to the social good. So you can think about Apple, right? So Apple allows us to FaceTime with our friends around the world, and we love that. But it also makes a lot of money and is actually now the largest company in the world. So you have to have a unique short and long-term goal, and you have to be, willing to do well and do good, okay, at the same time. And these short and long-term goals have to be connected to your past, but they also need to be a transition from your past. So it shouldn't be that you're just doing the same thing, but it should be that you are doing something related to your past. It cannot be a complete career shift, because that's dangerous, because they worry about career placement. Then number four, references and recommendations and resumes. So with references, you want to make sure that you distinguish yourself from your peers, from other people like you, and you can do that in terms of your communication skills, your leadership abilities, your analytical rigor, and you want to be as specific as you can in terms of dollars or percentages, everything like that. And you also need a resume that demonstrates your track record, both quantitatively and qualitatively. And we like to work really, really closely with the recommenders, because Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton, for example, have standardized their recommendation questions. So a lazy recommender will just do the same recommendation for all three schools. But that's not going to work, okay? Because if one school, Stanford, is looking for collaboration and innovation, they should be talking about examples of collaboration and innovation. If another school, Harvard, is looking for global entrepreneurship and leadership, they should be talking about that. And then if Wharton is talking about your capacity with data and analytics, they should be talking about that. So we really work hard with recommenders to make sure they know what each school's focus is, to make sure that they have the examples to back up their claims, because they can't just make empty claims. They've got to back them up with examples. So this is all really important. And then number five, you need a clear reason that you need to get an MBA from this school this year. And it can't just be about technical skills. It can't just be about model building or building a business plan. You really need to show why a top three school is absolutely essential for what you want to do this year. And our students in round one who've been most successful, the 590 who got into Harvard, the person with a 2.7 who got a half scholarship from Wharton, right? These folks were very, very clear about why they had to go to this school and how it was going to make a huge, huge difference. Here's a bonus. I think you also need a team of experts. According to a recent poll of people who actually got into the top 20 business schools, 57% admitted to using a graduate school admissions counselor, a professional like Stratus Prep. If 57% admit it, there's some percentage that no matter what would never admit it, so it's closer to probably 60 to 65%, okay? And we can tell you that in major financial capitals like New York or Hong Kong or San Francisco or London, it's actually in excess of 70 to 80%, okay? So today, everyone is pretty much using admissions counselors, at least everyone who's getting in. And what you need to do is find the right admissions counselor, right, for you. And 2 points here. You want an admissions counselor who will give you references, which we are always happy to provide, and who will give you school-by-school statistics, which no other firm will do, even though I've been pushing the firms to have an agreement that we would all release our statistics. Nobody else seems to want to do that. So that is a little bonus tip for you. So this just details our entire admissions process. First we work on brainstorming and learning about you from every perspective, and then developing a strategy. And then through essay outlines, we deploy that strategy for each of the different schools. We also help you with school selection. Then after you write the essays, we do unlimited edits and reviews. Then the essays are reviewed by the school-specific experts and the professional editors. We also do full editing of the resume and the short answer questions. Then after you submit, we do interview prep, and we also help you with negotiating scholarships, and then choosing where to go, because often our students have a number of different choices. So here's some more case studies from round one. Rob, 3.7, 700, got into Stanford. He was in management consulting. Alex, 4 years in finance, 670. He got into HBS and Columbia. Our friend Victor from India, a 3.0, very low GPA, and a 670. But what was important about him is he was an entrepreneur. Not actually a very successful entrepreneur, but he brought entrepreneurship to the table, which was really important to HBS, and he got in there. And he was an engineer, male engineer from India, which is one of the most competitive pools, just like Alex was a male in finance in New York City. That's also one of the most competitive pools. And then I sort of alluded to Jennifer earlier. She got into Wharton with a half scholarship with a 2.7 GPA. Now, she had a 720 with a high quant score, about a 50 on the quant, which really helped her. So here are my key takeaways, and then I will take your questions. Recognize the difficulty of getting into top business schools. It is still extremely tough and getting tougher every year because the number of international applicants keeps increasing. The number of U.S. applicants is also increasing, but not nearly as quickly. Budget enough time. Be prepared now really is the time to get started for round one if you want to be serious about this. Write what each of the different AdComs is looking for by customizing your application for each school. And then think about using, proven, seasoned experts who will be there to help you every step along the way. So here is our exclusive offer, and you're going to need to act quickly if you want to take advantage of this. The first 75 attendees on the webinar who email consult@stratusprep.com with BTG in the subject will get a complimentary 30-minute consultation with me, as well as a 25% savings on any test prep and admissions counseling services that they buy with the code BTG25, as long as they purchase by March 30th. If you're not in the first 75, still email consult@stratusprep.com with BTG in the subject matter, and you will still get the consultation with me, but your discount will be 15% instead of the 25%, okay? And as I mentioned before, references are always available. So I can tell you that we're already halfway to the 75, so definitely if you want to be in that first 75, you should email now so that we can get you set up and guarantee you the 25% savings if that is of interest to you. So if you're in the first 75 to email consult@stratusprep, you get 25% off. Everybody else gets 15% off. Either way, you do get the complimentary 30-minute consultation with me. In 30 minutes, I'm not going to be able to tell you how to fix all the problems in your application or what to write your essays about or who your recommenders should be, because I won't know you that well yet. But I will be able to lay out a plan of how we can, attack the schools that you're looking for and get you into those schools and come up with a plan of how we can work together to be successful. Great. Well, let me take your questions now. I've seen a few questions come in. So next, someone asked, how important is IR? I have a 710, but a 3 in IR. Should I retake the test? IR is not that important. It's becoming more important, but still this year, a bunch of people who are applying will have taken the test 4 or 5 years ago before IR existed. So some schools just disregard IR because they don't think it's fair to benefit or hold against someone something that not everybody has, because IR was only put in place a little over 2 years ago. With a 710, I think it depends what applicant pool you're in. If you're in a really competitive applicant pool, males in finance in New York, or Indian male engineers, or Chinese applicants who are male and in computer science or technology or engineering, you may want to retake, because those tend to be pools that are especially competitive. So getting that 730 plus will be, there's a difference between 710 and 730. There's no real difference between 730, 750, 770, 790, but there is a difference between 710 and 730. So if you're in one of those competitive applicant pools, I would retake. And then obviously you can focus on getting the IR up alone, but I would not retake it just because of the IR, because it's just not that important. At the very most, it would be a tiebreaker if you were right on the line. Do you have any suggestions for college seniors applying to deferred admissions programs? Yes, so we work with between 50 and 100 applicants to the 2+2 programs and the deferred admission program at Stanford, 2+2 at Harvard, Yale Silver Scholars. And so it's really important to show, what you're going to do for the next 2 years, and then why you need the MBA, and then what you're going to do after that, and to have a really clear plan as to why you need the MBA and why you know now that you need the MBA. I think that those programs are particularly competitive. Our acceptance rate is about the same as our regular acceptance rate, but they are really, really competitive. So, but there's no downside, because if you don't get in, it only helps that you apply to 2+2 or deferred admission or Silver Scholars when you reapply 2 or 3 years later, because it shows that you were always thinking about the school and always thinking about the MBA. So the next question is, for leadership experience, do they care much about Eagle Scout Awards, Boy Scout Awards? So they don't really care about anything before college. So that is not something that is going to be too important to them. Obviously, it's a huge life honor, but it's not going to be too important to the MBA admissions committee. So they don't really look at anything before college. In the event you are unique and you are pretty sure there is no other person in your pool, how do you improve your chances of getting in? Well, nobody is completely unique. I mean, everybody has some competitors. So if you're an entrepreneur, you have competitors. If you work at an NGO, you have competitors. If you're a nonprofit, you have competitors. So everybody will have competitors. But again, I think your personal story, without knowing you, your personal story is really going to help to set you apart and differentiate you. Is it impossible for a 710 GPA with a low GMAT from approving university due to special circumstances with a failed startup and more than 13 years of work experience to get into HBS? If not, what improvements to my profile would you recommend? What other programs are within my reach? Obviously, HBS would be a stretch for you, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. I had a failed startup, so having a failed startup is not a negative. It actually can be turned into a positive because you learned a lot of important lessons. But in terms of what improvements to make, I would need to get to know you a lot better. We would definitely have you take some U.S.-based online courses, not through Coursera or Khan Academy, but actual real online classes where you get grades and everything like that. So we would. There are definitely things that we can do in terms of your community leadership, in terms of your grades. Your GMAT is totally fine for Harvard. Your age we can work with. I think that's totally fine. A failed startup I'm not worried about. So there are some things we need to address in your profile, but things are not as bad as you think. And it depends what you want to do next. What other schools you should look at. If you want to do general management, Kellogg has got a great program. Stanford has got a great program. If you want to do finance, Columbia, Wharton have great programs. Chicago has a great program for finance. If you want to do marketing, Wharton or Kellogg would be good to look at. All right, the next question is, at INSEAD, how important are the entrepreneurial skills? Less important than in the U.S. So European schools care less about that than U.S. schools, but it still definitely helps. But at INSEAD, they care about they care a lot about your international experience. Okay. So somebody else said, how can I really make my extracurricular activities stand out? Well, the way to make the extracurricular activities stand out is to be in leadership positions, so leading up a new initiative, something like that, okay? Or being on a junior board, for example. What are your recommendations for candidates with low GPAs? So first, if you have a good reason for the low GPA, we would want to explain that. And if you don't, then we wouldn't want to try to make excuses. And you also want to take additional courses to demonstrate that your GPA then is not representative of who you are today. Hi, I recently took a cold GMAT practice test without studying, and I scored a 500, and I'm looking to apply in round 1. How long will it take your team to get me to a 650 plus, if that is even possible? That's definitely possible. I would recommend 30 to 50 hours of tutoring. Now, each hour of tutoring will come with about 4 hours of homework, so you're talking about somewhere between 200 and 150 hours of studying. So, I think that can be done in 3 to 4 months. So we're in March now, so June, July, we could have you ready. And we would be working on the admissions at the same time. Entrepreneurship skills in terms of job profile as a business development manager to grow sales in his assigned territories. So, you can definitely show entrepreneurship even when you're in a big company. So what you need to do is demonstrate that you are someone who thinks differently, who innovates, who comes up with new and different ideas, who challenges the status quo. Even if you're in a big company, you can demonstrate what we call intrapreneurship, entrepreneurship within a larger company. Do the schools care how many times you've taken the GMAT? No, they just care about the highest score. Okay. And then somebody asked, if I am half European and half Latin American, is there a better place to apply? Yes, I would apply as a Latin American applicant. It's going to be a little bit less competitive for you. I come from Chile. Okay. How do schools evaluate grades from countries where the grading system is not similar? Okay. So they all use this company called World Education Services. You can go to their website, WES.org, and they'll show you more or less how they're going to adjust your grades to a scale. It's not just a straight conversion, okay? It's based on a lot of different factors, what the highest person in your class ended up getting, how rigorous your university was. So they know every university in the world and how to convert your grades to a U.S. scale. How does your placement process work with respect to admissions consultants? Do we get to choose? You certainly can choose if you want. What we typically do is I make an assignment based on who I think would be a great fit, and then you usually have a recommendation, I should say, and then you usually have an opening call with them, and then if not, then you can choose amongst other folks. But if you really want to choose a certain admissions consultant, as long as they are not at capacity, we're happy to have you work with them. But you would definitely want to get signed up pretty soon, because some of our best consultants are starting to get to capacity shortly. All right, great. How can we write about our accomplishments at work? Will promotions speak about accomplishments? What if we do not have specific achievements at work? So a promotion is not an accomplishment. So let your boss and let your resume talk about the promotions. What you need to do is talk about the projects that you worked on, the things that you did that got you the promotion, right? What kind of results did you drive that resulted in the promotion? That's what they want to see. So just as a reminder, we have a couple of spots left out of the first 75. So if you want to get the 25% discount, email consult@stratusprep.com with BTG in the subject line, and you'll get a free 30-minute consultation with me. You'll also get 25% savings on any test prep or admissions counseling services that you purchase by March 30th. If you are not in the top 75, and we have looks like about 10 spots left, then you can email us at consult@stratusprep with BTG in the subject line. You'll still get the 30-minute consultation with me, but you'll get 15% off until March 30th instead of the 25%. And remember that references are always available. Okay, do top MBA programs look at past consulting experience, since most graduates tend to gravitate towards consulting firms after graduation? No, I mean, obviously consulting is a very competitive pool, but only about 20 to 30% of the applicants come from consulting. So It's no different than coming from investment banking, for example. Okay. Are part-time MBA career-wise just as effective as normal MBAs, and does the application need to be dealt with differently? So yes, we work with a lot of part-time MBAs, and we definitely are you definitely want to be sure to be really accurate in your approach to this. But let me just see here. There's another question. What are your thoughts about online courses such as Coursera or HBX? Do you think if you take those courses it will help you out, or are they just a waste of time? They're just a waste of time. So HBX is not for people who are going to HBS, because if you go to HBS, they actually do HBX as part of their program. So doing it ahead of time will definitely not help. It could actually hurt. Coursera does not count. Now, if you want to do continuing education courses, those will help. So UCLA, UC Berkeley, continuing education courses in accounting or finance, like where you're actually an enrolled student, those will help. But the sort of online programs that are not actually enrolled at the school, like Coursera, Khan Academy, those do not help. All right. You spoke a bit about specific on applicant pools. Can you speak about trends you've seen with underrepresented minorities in terms of increased numbers of applications or competitiveness? Yeah, I mean, there is an overall increase in applications, which makes all of the pools that much more competitive. So, that is something that, is critically important, within the underrepresented minority communities, as well as other applicant communities. So we are seeing an overall increase in the number of applicants. So it is getting more competitive for everyone. There aren't exceptions to that. The pools that I highlighted are getting particularly competitive, particularly quickly, but it's getting more competitive for everyone right now. I've been working as a freelance marketing consultant to close to a year, and worked at a publishing house before that for close to 2 years. Is it okay to submit recommendations from my previous jobs? They don't have clients who know me well enough to become my recommenders. And you certainly could do one of your recommendations from your previous job, but then we would want to think about, how else we might want to approach recommendations. I'm not sure that just doing 2 from your previous job is going to be enough to get you in. They're going to probably be too similar. Somebody asked, what does INSEAD care about other than international experience? Well, they obviously care about analytics. They care about communication skills. Collaboration and teamwork are really important. Demonstrated leadership experience is also very important. So those are the kinds of things that INSEAD cares about. What kind of advice can you give to someone who has a non-typical MBA work background, specifically architecture, that has had the opportunity to make minor business decisions but with very minimal in them? Can involvement in local industry or relevant organizations, pro bono work be helpful? Yeah, absolutely. So there's all different ways to demonstrate leadership in your industry and in your job. They don't all have to be heading up, projects. So and they don't all have to be business related. How open is the admissions committee to a gay applicant from a non-traditional background? So I'm gay, and we have many gay applicants that we work with. You mentioned that you are from the design space, and that is absolutely fine. We've had fine artists who've been admitted. We've had, we've had folks from fashion and jewelry design who've been admitted, so to top schools. So the fact that you're LGBT does not make any difference, and it doesn't matter if you're LGBT and in finance or LGBT and in design. And then separately, the fact that you're in design or fine arts also doesn't make a difference. In fact, that would actually be something unique to add to your profile to differentiate you. How many schools would you recommend applying to in round 1? We recommend 4 to 6. If you apply to 4 or more schools with us, we actually guarantee that you will get admitted to one of them. And if you don't, we work with you for free the next year. And the first thing that they taught us at HBS was never give away anything for free. And the classic example of this is Hyundai. So they had a reputation for having bad cars, but it actually wasn't a fair reputation. And so they started a we want to make sure that you are going to differentiate yourself and everything like that. So that's what's critically important. Now, there's many different ways to differentiate yourself, many different ways to demonstrate leadership. I got a 660 on the GMAT and thought it wasn't so good, but my first choice schools, a top 5, sent me an email congratulating me for the GMAT score. Does it mean I should be focusing on other aspects of my application, or should I take it again? No, you should probably take it again. Schools want to market to everyone, so that doesn't mean that they're happy with that score. It just means that, you could potentially be competitive. But remember, the schools have an incentive for as many people to apply as possible, because that then decreases their acceptance rate. So I wouldn't take that as a sign that you're definitely in. I would definitely retake with that 660 if you're looking at top 5 schools. You mentioned you need a 49 in quant for Wharton. I'm really interested in Wharton's entrepreneurship program with management consulting and startup experience. Would they budge on a 49? We've sometimes seen them admit students with a 48, I think once or twice with a 47, but it's pretty typical that it has to be a 49. All right. How important is the GPA after 4 years of work experience? Can a low GPA be mitigated? Yeah, it can be mitigated, but it has to be mitigated by other courses. It can't be mitigated by extra years of work experience. And for Harvard and Stanford, it's much harder to mitigate. What GMAT school do you think will mitigate it? Well, at schools that care about GPA like Harvard and Stanford, even a perfect 800 would not completely mitigate it, but it would obviously help. I think anything over sort of 720, 730 will be very helpful. Do US-based online schools help with this? Yes, as long as it's from a legitimate university. So not like University of Phoenix or Coursera. It has to be a school that is a real university that happens to have an online program. Do letters of recommendations from high-profile individuals have real impact? No. Your letters of recommendation should be from the people who know you the best. That's what's most important. What is a good way for someone in R&D to demonstrate accomplishment, since most projects take a long time in becoming actual products or to become profitable? I need to learn more about your specific projects and where they are and everything like that. And once I have that, then I'll be able to assist you more. But it's hard to know how we would. There are definitely milestones, and we can definitely show success. How much difference will 1 year of additional work experience help over the existing 3 years? It's not going to make any difference. If you put together a strong application with 3 or 4 years, it's not going to make any difference. What do you think is the upper age limit to apply and have realistic chances at Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, assuming your profile across the board is competitive? I would probably say late 30s. We've definitely seen people getting in 35, a little older than that. Where can one find reliable rankings of MBAs, since different websites give different listings? This becomes confusing. I use U.S. News and World Report, but and then I also use Forbes. You can use Business Week, although they are fading out of the MBA space, so I'm not sure that's the best idea. I don't like Financial Times because it's heavily weighted to favor European schools, which I don't think is fair. I think you should give even to everyone. My boss for the last year is planning to move to a new department within a few months. Would it be okay to use this individual for a recommendation instead of a new boss? Yeah, that would be totally fine. We can explain that, but there's not going to be a problem there. Okay. I have international work experience over the past few years in an undergrad from Columbia University with a 3.0 and a 720. I have a lot of responsibility at work with few direct reports and no significant promotions. What is the best way to position my strengths? Again, I'd have to get to know you way better to figure all of that out. We will spend months literally figuring that out and developing a strategy to make you as successful as possible. What's the GPA that you need for top 5 schools? So for Harvard and Stanford, they like to see 3.6, 3.7. For the other schools, above 3.0. Okay. Can I talk about concentrations in our essays? Well, it's going to depend on the essay question. I like the healthcare concentration, but I do not have a healthcare background. Well, that may also be an issue. We'd have to figure out if we could make that pivot or if it's smart to make that pivot on the application. You mentioned some schools don't care as much about about GPA, and others care more about GMAT. Can you share how you have reached this conclusion? How do we know which schools care or don't care? So we obviously can tell you which schools care or don't care. Some schools are honest about it and they just tell you, but also after seeing 4,000 applications over the last 10 years and the results of those applications, or 4,000, I should say, applicants, so probably almost 20,000 applications, you definitely figure out which schools care more about GMAT and which schools care more about GPA. Do excellent grades in a master's degree program after college help to mitigate a low GPA? They do help. They don't replace the undergrad GPA because they want to compare everybody's undergraduate GPAs because usually master's GPAs are higher, but it definitely does help. How important is age in an application process? I'm currently 38 and interested in pursuing my MBA. You're right at the upper bounds. It's certainly possible, but you are at the upper bounds. Do each of your consultants work with, on average, how many applicants do each of your consultants work with in round one? It's usually about 5 clients, and they are, for the most part, full-time. Okay. What are the most reputable schools that offer online courses to boost a lower GPA? Probably UCLA and Berkeley, but it'll depend what courses you're taking and where you're from, and also sometimes the hours, depending on if you're international or not. It could vary. So, but those are 2 good schools to look at. Okay. Will they care if I have a 3-4 but a C in an advanced finance class and a D+ in calculus? Should I retake those 2 bad courses? It's fine to retake those courses. They're not going to look that closely at your transcript, but it's totally fine to do that. I'm married with children and over 30. Is this a deterrent? Nope. To admittance to top 5 schools? Nope. The woman that I was mentioning who was 35, she had 2 kids. She got in. We've had many folks in their early 30s with kids get admitted to Harvard, Stanford, etc. Is the absence of international experience taken negatively in applications? Some schools give it a lot of weight. Yes, it is important. So you want to try to get some international experience. It doesn't have to be international work experience, but you should have some international experience. It is important. Okay. If I'm working in an automobile design studio doing concept modeling, prototyping, and innovative design stuff, and there's some really innovative designs in the pipeline, is this something the schools might be interested in? Yeah, of course. I mean, anything that's innovative or entrepreneurial or where you're taking initiative or changing an industry is definitely something that the schools will care about. I am an Indian applicant with a biomedical engineering degree from the U.S., currently leading my family-run hospital with a 730 GPA. What school should I look at? So obviously that would also require a much longer conversation. I mean, you'll be competitive at top schools all over the world and top schools in the U.S., but we would need to know sort of what you want to do afterwards and what's important to you in a school and stuff like that. If we get waitlisted in round 1, would you apply to another set of schools in round 2? Probably, but we are usually successful in getting people off the wait list if they're waitlisted in round 1. But, just as a safety precaution, I think that probably makes sense. I've worked in startups and raised to be in senior management without an MBA. And I do community work to help with my community. What are the top schools for general management? So probably the top schools for general management would be Harvard and Kellogg. Those are the 2 most known, but every school is going to be pretty strong in that. Okay. Someone asked, is having global colleagues enough global experience? Not really. They usually want you to actually have been abroad for some period of time. Now, it could be, as I said, a 1 or 2 week service project that we could come up with or something like that. But, just having global colleagues is not enough. Great. Well, that was all the questions. So before I sign off, just a reminder that we have a couple of slots left. Just go ahead and email consult@stratusprep.com with BTG in the subject line to get the complimentary 30-minute consultation with me and the 25% savings. And then if you are not in the next couple of people right in, then you can still get 15% savings by emailing consult@stratusprep.com with BTG in the subject line, and you'll still get the 30-minute consultation with me. So there were 1 or 2 other questions that came in. How much of a GMAT score is required for HBS? I mean, HBS cares probably the least about GMAT, so we've seen people get in low 600s, 590. When should an applicant start working with Stratus Prep for round 1? Right away. 70% of our capacity is already taken up for round one. People started in December, so you should definitely start right away. Does a Big Four audit background put you at a disadvantage for top 10 or 15 schools? Not at all. It's all about how we explain what experience you have and where you want to take that and go in the future. Wonderful. Well, signing off from Stratus Prep headquarters, this is Shawn O'Connor, founder and CEO of Stratus Prep. It has been my pleasure to be on this webinar with you and all of our friends from Beat the GMAT. Thank you so much. I'll look forward to doing consultations with many of you. And if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to reach out to us. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.